and they were his daughters. They were the three most beautiful, wonderful daughters that any man has ever known. And a miracle happened, because as those daughters, they danced and they played on that mountain, that land began to change. Grass began to spring up in that dry dust. And before he knew it, as the years went by, that dry, dusty, endless mountain turned into a great green wilderness. And little bugs and insects, they started to find their homes in that grass. And then before he knew it, little birds had begun to make their nests in that grass. And then before he knew it, the sky was full of birdsong. And now when he sat out on that mountain, his heart was just full of so much joy. The middle daughter was wild. Now Why was as wild as the mountain she had been born on. It was difficult to know whether the mountain had made her wild or she had made the mountain wild. But she was truly of that place, and she had no desire to leave her father or that mountain. But what she did wonder about was what was on the other side of that nearby mountain. Please, Father, just tell me what is on the other side of that mountain. But her father, who'd spent his whole life living on that hill, just couldn't answer her. If he could just give them one last gift to make sure that they were safe on their journey. Teardrops, he said. Teardrops, that's what we need. 3 more teardrops, and that will give my daughters the power that they need to go off on their journey. And so he tried to remember that day when he had those first 3 teardrops. He tried to remember the feeling. He tensed up his body as hard and tightly as he could. He tried to imagine there was a great rock in his stomach. He tried to make his breathing go as quickly as he possibly could. He tried to make his shoulders heave up and down. He squeezed and 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 he squeezed, but it was no good. He was just too happy. There once was a village where the women were uptight and the men were the boss, and gossip rolled off their tongues like marbles. And living in this village, there was a man who was not the same as the others. He was meek and he was mild and he was gentle, and he had no interest in other people's business. And he grew tired. Eventually he just grew tired of those gossiping ways. Surely, he said, there must be a better life than this. Above the village of Bleddfa, there is a high, high, high hill. And if you climb to the top of that hill, you can see for miles across the Mid Wales landscape. And it was on the edge of this hill, where there's an old oak woodland with ancient oak trees that have been so battered by the winter weather that they're tiny and stunted, but they're really ancient. And it was in a clearing in this wood that the meek mild man decided to build himself a little cottage. Very small, very neat, very tidy. And there he lived alone on the hill. He had everything he could possibly need. It was just him and the land and the sky and the wind. Perfect. Or so he thought. When the big burly Welshman had gone, the meek mild man pulled the wild woman from the shadows. He looked her clear in the eye and he said, "You have got to tell me what is going on." With that, she took him by the hand. She turned on her heel and she guided him out of the door along a winding path that led to the top of the mountain. She turned to him and she kissed him on the cheek, on the head, on the nose, and on the mouth. He closed his eyes, drinking in her kisses. And then suddenly those kisses turned to licks. The soft hands on his shoulders turned to sharp claws. He opened his eyes and the woman had transformed into a wolf. And then, with a twitch of her whiskers and a flash of her tail, she was gone. The meek mild man waited. Seconds felt like minutes, minutes felt like hours, hours felt like days. And then, when 3 hours had passed, the wild woman returned in her human form. Her dress was covered in blood, and in her hand she held the carcass of a lamb